Gauteng High Court has suggested the introduction of mandatory mediation for civil cases, and this is all about addressing a backlog in the legal system and expediting the delivery of justice. Judge President Dunstan Mlambo proposes that cases will only be set down for trial if they first undergo mediation. And while mediation will relieve some of the caseload, the questions being asked by experts and observers is it enough? Dion van Beek is from the South African Mediators Association and Mbekezeli Benjamin from Judges Matter. They will help me explore this question and the effectiveness of the proposal that's currently on the table. To both of you, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I know we had meant to meet yesterday, but thank you for holding that space for us till today. Dion, I want to start with you because you'll provide for us this inside view on mediation. Now, by some accounts, this plan or this idea to bring mediation in is going to be creating another bureaucratic hurdle, especially for victims or legal teams representing people in, road accident or medical negligence cases. You're in the system. You understand this firsthand. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. So from my side, obviously, this is not a new introduction into law. Actually, there was a big attempt in 2020, actually, with the rules of the court, Section 41A, to start bringing in mediation into the mainstream. Obviously, this is coming on the back of, as you mentioned, there's quite a big backlog. Cases being scheduled in 2031, which actually also then sort of cause a blockage for people that want to participate in the legal system. And it's also in terms of the Constitution, not giving them the ability to do a fair trial. So mediation has proven quite successful in various countries. There is this attempt to put it into our legal system in South Africa, and this need or this total blockage in the legal system is actually now creating that opportunity for mediation to start playing a pivotal role in the South African legal framework. So we are very excited for that. And obviously the other thing is cases like RAF and medical malpractice cases actually perfectly supports the idea of mediation. So it's the mediation should be seen as a support to the legal system, not as a replacement to the legal system. So actually what the intention here is that many of the cases can be settled through the mediation, and based on that, only the real cases that need some court time actually can then go through into the court. That will also declutter the court significantly and then allow the judges to also focus on matters that cannot be dealt with in mediation. So we are, as I say, we're very excited for this, and we see a great benefit in that.
Just a quick follow-up before I bring Mbekezeli in. Which cases are likely not to be resolved? As you say, in those cases, then they can go, they can still continue on to court. So which are some of those difficult ones that might have to follow that course?
Yeah, you see, typically the cases in terms of RAF is basically twofold. The first is basically to prove that there is a case. And then secondly is the quantum on the case. What is the quantum? So obviously from a mediation point of view, which is a total facilitative process, it is definitely where you basically want the RAF and the legal representative of the party to in a amicable way get together and to agree. So there's definitely, but there was a couple of pilots a couple of years ago where it proved quite successful. So we anticipate that about 80 to 90% of the cases will definitely be able to be settled through a mediative process. But if the parties cannot agree, obviously a mediator cannot force agreement. So in those cases, we foresee that then that will then filter through into the court system.
Yeah. All right, Mbekezeli, let me bring you in. I'll circle back to Dion later about one of the other criticisms, which is about, whether this will all become more expensive in the end for people who are seeking relief. But from your perspective as Judges Matter, I think that you raise the issue that Gauteng is the largest and busiest High Court division in the country. country. People are already waiting, years before their matter can even be heard in court. And what you're proposing is just, bring in more judges, bring in more warm bodies to deal with these things. So talk to us about where you think the systemic issue comes from and how it can be resolved.
Good morning, Iman. Good morning to Dion and to the viewers. Yes, the primary issue is really the number of judges that we have. We just don't have enough. If we look at the Gauteng High Court alone, which handles the bulk of all civil cases in South Africa, we haven't really had an increase in the number of judges since 2008. So in the 17 years, we've had 82 judges serving the entirety of the Gauteng population. And we know that in those 17 years, the population of Gauteng has moved from 10 million people to 16 million people. That's more than a 50% increase. But the judicial complement hasn't matched those increases. But what we've also seen is that our society has become much more litigious than before. People are really no longer trying to resolve disputes in other places. They're quickly running to court. And so we're seeing many more cases going to court, but also the complexity of those cases. Sometimes because of, I think, economic growth and other factors, those cases end up in court. So what this mediation service is trying to do is to relieve some of the pressure that is currently on the court. Like Dion says, a lot of the cases actually that involve medical negligence claims or RAF cases can actually be mediated, because the question is really on whether the issue of liability, so whether the RAF takes liability for it, and then the quantum. Those kinds of issues can be discussed around the table, and there could be agreement on those issues without the intervention of a judge. And so we believe that this will help. It's not the silver bullet. We still need more judges, but this helps in relieving some of that pressure.
I guess it would be interesting to understand then, Dion, what the turnaround rate might be. We've already addressed the issue of the long delays in getting on the roll. We know that the roll is sometimes flooded with RAF cases. So just talk to us about how mediation, while also reducing the backlog, can be, can consume less time, and these matters can be resolved quicker.
Absolutely. Basically on that, I mean, as mentioned, some of the cases really is ideal for mediation, and RAF and medical malpractice is definitely some of those cases. What is interesting about it is many of the cases, the RAF cases that actually go to court, actually gets resolved on the same day, pretty much. So in terms of mediation, that will obviously, there's two, from our side, there's two things, two moving parts that's actually quite important to take into account. I mean, obviously adding more judges is most probably one thing, but also once you start adding new judges, you most probably need some more infrastructure to basically for the judges to actually operate in. So obviously that's a big thing. In terms of mediation don't actually need additional court infrastructure. And we anticipate that many of the cases, obviously we categorize the cases. So some of the cases might take a bit longer in terms of, when all the protocol and all the sort of the requirements are not fulfilled, the parties might need to go back and basically update and make sure all the documentation, everything is correct. So that might cause a bit of a delay. But we're very positive that because of the current success, that the courts are experiencing settling most of the matters sort of on the same day, we sort of anticipate the same kind of that's going to happen in a mediation. So from that angle, we actually see that many of those cases can be resolved in quite a short period of time, without without waiting. There's no real need then for the parties to really wait for a court date, which is somewhere in 2031. Basically, the mediation can happen almost immediately. And as we understand and as we have done our research, many of these cases are ready to be resolved.
Yeah.
So we see that there's going to be quite a lot of low-hanging fruit here, and that many of these cases will be able to be resolved in a very, very short period of time.
And Mbekezeli, I mean, I think that's an important note to make, and it's one that the Gauteng Judge President has also noted, that 85% of those civil cases are resolved on the morning of the trial date. And so there is that opportunity to, in cases which seem to be sort of black and white, obviously you'll get more complicated ones, that they can be resolved and people can come to an agreement. The other question then is on affordability and whether this brings with it extra costs, Mbekezeli?
Well, Iman, the real question is, can we afford for people to wait for 5 years for them to get their day in court? And what we know is that, number one, people are dying. If you've been injured in a road accident or you have a medical negligence claim, you need that medical treatment, right? And so you can't really wait for 5 years for that case to be resolved so that you get your compensation. So what we're seeing are people dying, the evidence is lost, memories fade, so you can't get the witnesses that you need. And so we do need to find ways to bring those dates forward, to make sure that people get a speedier day in court if they do need to go to court, and that they are paid as quickly as possible. So I think from a cost perspective, yes, it will require spending a little bit more money in making sure that you pay the mediator, but what you get as a benefit is that you get your case resolved much sooner than the 5 years. The other aspect of it, I think, which is a real concern from lawyers and people who have their dates currently allocated in court, is that the Road Accident Fund and the State Attorney's Office are the biggest delays in this, unfortunately. They don't participate until the day of the court hearing, which is why you see the 85% of cases being settled on the morning of the trial. That's because that's the only time that you are likely to get a response from those two state institutions. So there does need to be an intervention from that perspective, because this mediation mechanism will not go anywhere if you don't get the RAF and the state attorney to also buy in and actively participate in trying to resolve the cases.
Yeah, and again, one wonders, given some of the issues at the RAF, for example, whether they have that capacity to be able to do that at the onset. As you point out, both of you, it will certainly make things make matters a lot smoother and quicker to resolve. There's this other systemic issue, Mbekezeli, which you as an organization have also red flagged and written about, and it's about the Judicial Services Commission and their ability to begin to fill vacancies. It's so interesting how all of this in the ecosystem of the justice system in South Africa, each thing contributes to a knock-on effect on the other, and ultimately could stand in the way of access to justice, given how long it takes to resolve some of these cases, or even get a date on the court roll for your matter to be heard.
Absolutely, Iman. What we do need from the Judicial Service Commission is that they need to fill vacancies as quickly as possible. Right now, the JSC will be meeting, in fact, on Tuesday next week to fill vacancies in the Labour Court. But we do know that there were vacancies that were not filled in the Western Cape and KZN High Court last year in October. The reason is, why haven't they scheduled interviews? Why are they not filling those posts? The posts that already exist are already funded by the Treasury. But the bigger fight, Iman, is about increasing the number of judges. The Johannesburg Attorneys Association has made a conservative estimate that in Johannesburg, we need 20 more judges. In Pretoria, we need 20 more judges, and probably the same for Western Cape and KZN, which have also seen increased population numbers. If you go to Limpopo, there are only 9 judges to serve the entire province. And so we do need to have a conversation about how we increase the general number of judges. And that's a conversation that the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Finance do need to now come to the party and say and tell us what is their plan.
I want to close with you, Dion, if I can. So this is a draft directive, and there was a proposal and a suggestion then that this can be implemented by the 14th of April. It's been circulated. We know from the Office of the Chief Justice in that interview with Groundup that a draft had been distributed to law societies and everyone else who might be affected. But it's not final. What are your thoughts on whether this will come to fruition and how it impacts your work? I mean, do we have enough mediators?
Yeah, so obviously from my side, what I feel or what I think is that this is born out of a need. And as was mentioned, if somebody gets injured in an RAF case, there is an immediate need. I mean, we cannot wait 5-6 years for that person to be getting his allotment. So I definitely think this is came from a desperate need in the court. I don't think the need is going to disappear. And I think this is definitely an effective and efficient way of starting to address that need as soon as possible. So I think the whole legal fraternity must get together to address this need. Obviously, there's other moving parts like additional judges and things like that. But even if the mediation is focusing on the RAF and cases, those judges can also then focus on a more court-related kind of cases that really needs to be dealt with in court. It has been proven successful in countries like Italy, UK, America, where they're doing mediation. So I think it's just it definitely is going to need to happen to help this whole current dilemma that we're sitting with. So I'm very positive on that.
All right, Deon van Beek, thank you very much. And Mbekezeli, Benjamin, thank you to you both for sharing with us your perspective